Okay, we are live. Welcome everybody. We're so excited for this Friday's webinar featuring Brain Health Kitchen with our very good friend, Dr. Annie Fenn. So we're just gonna give folks a few minutes to arrive while Dr. Fenn sets up her cooking demo for us. We're super excited. Just a few housekeeping items here. Please feel free to use the Q&A and or the chat box to ask any questions. So I'll be fielding those questions today, and I'll feed those to Dr. Fenn throughout the hour. Additional resources can be found on our website, www.wearehfc.org, as well as brainhealthkitchen.com. So we'll be sharing those in the chat box as well. Again, super excited to get started today. Hope you've all had a chance to check out Brain Health Kitchen. We want to make this as interactive as possible for a webinar. So we'll let Dr. Fenn sort of talk with us for a little bit. Please feel free to share your questions and we'll try and get them all answered. And I will turn it over to you.
Hi, everybody. It's really good to see everybody here. I was so happy to see how many people signed up. So hello, I'm Annie Fenn. And if you were some of the caregivers that joined me, oh gosh, back in the beginning of the lockdown, hello again. We made preserved lemons and pickled onions, and I hope that was all really helpful to you. I'm coming to you from my kitchen in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where I live, and I have a couple things I want to cook for you, but I want to talk to you about choosing cooking oils, because this is one of the most important things you can do to make your diet more brain healthy, and especially knowing which oils to avoid is a key thing in brain health. You know, like I've talked about before, we want to flood our brains with neuroprotective foods, and we want to avoid the foods that we know accelerate cognitive decline. So I want to give you some information that will arm you better to be able to protect your cognitive health. This is what it's really all about. And it doesn't mean you have to avoid all oils entirely. Some oils are actually good for you, and some of them I wouldn't recommend at all. So I'm going to break it down for you. I've broken down cooking oils into 3 categories. Let me know if you can see this okay. Everybody see that? So the first category is brain-friendly oils. The second one is going to be occasional oils, and the third one is going to be oils to avoid. So I call these brain-friendly oils because they have nutrients in them that are actually proven to be beneficial for your brain. They also have another really important factor in that they have a beneficial fat profile. Like there are some fats are actually good for us and some fats are not good for us. Getting that combination right is really key and just really difficult. So of the brain-friendly oils, they all have one thing in common. They all have mostly monounsaturated fats and some polyunsaturated fats. Those are the 2 types of fats that I would consider more brain-friendly. They also are low in saturated fats. Saturated fats are fine in moderation, in small amounts, but what we're finding from the scientific data is that the lower your diet is in saturated fat content, then the less risk you have of Alzheimer's disease and cardiovascular disease later in life. So the brain healthy diets like the Mind diet and the Mind diet are not low-fat diets at all. They're actually very rich in mono and polyunsaturated fats, but they can be under 5% saturated fat. And that's what the data is showing can reduce our risk of Alzheimer's later in life. They're also the most delicious oils to cook with, and so we're not really losing out on anything by avoiding the oils and choosing monounsaturated fats. So of the brain-friendly oils, I break it down into extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, nut oil, and then there's some blends. So let me show you some of the extra virgin olive oils that I have. Of the extra virgin olive oils, I like to break that down into high-end extra virgin olive oils and what I call everyday olive oils. Now the high-end extra virgin olive oils, these are the ones that they may be imported from a place like Italy They're very expensive. It's usually a cultivar of one type of olive that was coming from one farm. Just like wine, you can look at the label and tell, you know, where these olives came from and whether or not they were bottled at the place they say they were. There should be a harvest date on the label. So the high-end olive oil is expensive for a couple reasons. It's very hard to produce. It takes a lot of labor. They're not using machinery in factories to make this. They're using, you know, old-fashioned cold expressed methods to make this olive oil, which preserves the nutrients. The other reason it's expensive is that, you know, they can only make so much. So it's really in low quantities. It's not mass produced. And it's actually better for you because it has higher amounts of polyphenols. So polyphenols are a powerful antioxidant that comes from plants. The plant in olive oil is obviously olives, which is a type of fruit. And it's really high in polyphenols. And if you process olives very gently with old-fashioned methods, without heat, without refining it, then you preserve more of those polyphenols. And when it comes to brain health, it's especially important because there's a type of polyphenol called oleocanthal, and that's been found in animal studies to actually reduce amyloid plaque in the brain. And another important polyphenol is called hydroxytyrosol. And that has been shown to reduce the amount of LDL cholesterol in the blood that gets oxidized. Both of those things are really good for your brain and for your blood vessels in general. So high-end olive oil, like this one, which I brought back in my suitcase from Italy, and something like this, which I buy in bulk from Italy, and it's quite expensive, and I use it for my cooking school, so I buy a lot of it. You know, this, I don't cook with this. I actually just drizzle it on foods after they've been cooked, such as a salad dressing or a nice piece of fish or something like that. I don't want to heat it up because that will actually damage some of those polyphenols. So I'm very, very careful about my high-end olive oil. I use it sparingly. I would only buy enough that I could use within the year. And I would like to, once I open a container, I would use it within 6 months, okay? Now, the supermarket everyday olive oils are the ones that I use, you know, in my cooking every day. And I go through quite a lot of this because I'm cooking all the time with olive oil. This is one supermarket brand that I like a lot. It's called Partana. It's actually from Sicily. There are other brands I like that are also inexpensive. California Olive Ranch is a great company. When an olive oil has California on the label or certified California, all of those olives have to come from California, which is a good thing because they're very strict about their quality control. So this is the type of olive oil that I might buy in a can or just enough that I would use maybe in a couple weeks. I might decant it into a can like this because you don't want your olive oil to be in a glass jar. You don't want it to be in something like this where light can hit it, it can get oxidized. Again, that damages the polyphenols. These are also high quality olive oils, but because they're not made from, you know, certain types of olives or, you know, with very, very old methods, then they don't contain as many as the polyphenols as these high-end olive oils. They're still really good for you, and you can cook with them because their smoke point is somewhere between 325 and 350, which means you can saute in a pan, you can bake. I use this in baking my cookies and cakes and everything like that, pie tarts. And you can, don't be afraid to cook with olive oil because this is the olive oil that you want to use primarily in your cooking. Now, one hint about buying olive oil. High quality olive oil should have a harvest date, okay? If it doesn't have a harvest date on the label, I wouldn't buy it. But sometimes you really have to look for it. I mean, sometimes it's not where you can see, like on this one, it's all the way up here on the label. And the best by date is different than the harvest date. The best by date is 2 years after harvest. But we know that those polyphenols will start to degrade after 1 year from harvest. So I buy as close as I can to the harvest date, and I try to use it up within the year. I don't go by the best by date, although it wouldn't be harmful to do so. It's just not going to be as good of an oil for you. I know we'll have a lot of questions about olive oil. I'm going to move on to avocado oil, which is my second favorite brain-friendly oil. And this has become a lot more popular lately. This is one brand that I like. And avocado oil hits those 2 boxes that makes it brain friendly. It's primarily monounsaturated fats, which is good fat profile, very low in saturated fats, and it also contains polyphenols. And polyphenols are antioxidants. So it actually has nutrients in the oil that are good for us. So you can buy avocado oil in a jar. You can sometimes now get it in a non-aerosolized spray, which I really like for baking pans. And if I'm grilling, sometimes I will put this on my grill basket or right on the grill after I clean it. And that's a really handy way to use it. So avocado oil is coming down in price because it's become a lot more popular. So that's a good thing. It has a higher smoke point, somewhere up to 375 to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, which is good. So anything for high heat cooking, I'll use avocado oil. For my gentle cooking, which I normally recommend in the Brain Health Kitchen, is slow braising, slow sauteing, low heat cooking, all of those things, because it retains the nutrients in the food and prevents oxidation of the fats. Then I will use an olive oil for lower heat. Avocado oil is good if you want to roast vegetables at 400 degrees or greater. If you want to grill foods, you know, the temperature is probably going to be a little bit higher. The important thing about buying your avocado oil, make sure it's unrefined. As avocado oil gets more popular, it's starting to go down the route that coconut oil did, where it became popular and then food companies start marketing it in such a way to sell it to you as a health food. And this is actually a good health food if it's unrefined. But as they find cheaper ways to sell you avocado oil, you're going to find more and more refined products. Refined products are high heat processed, and they won't have the polyphenols, and they may actually rack up some of the omega-6 fatty acids, which are inflammatory to your brain that we don't want in our oils. So pick an unrefined product. That's really, really important. Now, my third category is nut oils, of the brain-friendly oils. And nut oils they can vary a lot in terms of their smoke point. They tend to have a very high smoke point, so people can use them for frying or high heat cooking. My favorite one is pecan oil. I have a big jug of this because I actually use this a lot in Brain Health Kitchen. Pecan oil can be a little bit hard to find, but if you know anything about pecans are so high in vitamin E. They're incredibly high in monounsaturated fats. So they have a lot of brain health benefits to it. This is a company called Kinlock. You can order this online. It's a very reputable company. Again, harvest date, make sure it's unrefined, make sure it's all of those things. But I use pecan oil, where I used to use canola oil or maybe grapeseed oil, some of those other oils in my cooking. I use it in baking when I want a neutral flavor. I bake a lot with olive oil, but sometimes that flavor doesn't really work. And then I lean on the pecan oil. Other nut oils like walnut oil, macadamia nut oil, I would go case by case. There's some really good products out there. They tend to be expensive and they're also highly perishable. Those are the types of oils that you want to buy a small amount. Only buy what you think you can use within a few months of opening the bottle. But they can be wonderful additions to your cooking, especially something like walnut oil, which is wonderful drizzled on vegetables and salads. And then the fourth category of my brain-friendly oils, I don't have a jar to show you, but you can get more and more avocado olive oil blends. And California Olive Ranch sells this. If you go and look in the olive oil section that carries that brand, and it's a blend of the two. And that way you get the flavor of the olive oil, but with a higher smoke point. So I use that in some of my cooking, maybe roasting vegetables between 375 and 400, maybe roasting a chicken, things of that nature. So I found that to be a really good versatile oil in my kitchen as well. So I know we'll have some more questions about that. I'm going to move on to the next oils, which are the occasional oils. And just so you know, I created a PDF for all of you that lists all the different oils I'm talking about, their smoke points, and also ways to use them and buying tips. So we'll send that to you when I'm done. So this is an outline of what I'll be sending you later. But now we can talk about the occasional oils. And this is just sort of a snapshot of what that looks like. So the oils that I use in my kitchen occasionally, well, there's butter. We know that butter is high in saturated fat, but if you buy grass-fed butter, like I like the European brands especially, because in Europe, cows are only fed grass. They're not allowed to be given GMO soy or corn feed. They have a higher amount of omega-3 fatty acids. And so when I do use butter, I lean on the grass-fed ones. Either these I find at my supermarket. There are also domestic brands that are grass-fed only. At my farmer's market, I find really good butter from biodynamic farms. And the butter tends to be really yellow, and that's because of the omega-3 fatty acids. Now, I just told you that a brain healthy diet doesn't have a lot of saturated fat in it. So I really do limit my use of butter in the Brain Health Kitchen. If you look at the Mind Diet guidelines, they recommend no more than a tablespoon of butter a day. And one of the reasons we think that the Mind Diet posted such great results in terms of reducing Alzheimer's risk over the course of the 5 years they tested, I mean, the Alzheimer's risk was reduced by 53%. We think that's because the Mind Diet included very little butter, very little cheese, very little fried and fast foods, pastries, and sweets. So all of those things in the diet can give you a lot of saturated fat, are very much limited by serving size in the Mind Diet. But I still love butter. I don't use it hardly as much as I used to. And I found a lot of ways to get around the butter. One thing I'm gonna make for you is an avocado butter. And it's basically 1 part avocado, 1 part grass-fed butter with lemon juice, garlic, and salt. And I put that into my food processor. And so this is going to drop down the fat content of my butter to make it more like an avocado and less like a saturated fat-rich butter. And it's so rich because of the avocado as well that a little bit goes a long way. I put it on fish. I cook with it. I do all sorts of things with it. And it keeps really well and freezes really well. And so if you have avocados that are going off, this is a good way to use them. So we'll make that when we're done talking about the other occasional oils. So butter is one, ghee is another one. I get a lot of questions about ghee. Ghee is basically just butter that has been processed or melted so that all of the solids are taken out. And so it has a very, very high smoke point. When I talk about smoke point, what I mean is that is the temperature at which the oil will start to burn, where it will kind of transition from being fine until burning. And that's important for brain health because we don't want anything to oxidize in these fats. We don't want to eat anything that has oxidized fat because that means they have become inflammatory. That's the whole idea behind the low heat cooking methods and all of those things. So ghee is fine to cook with, but I put it in the category of butter, less than a tablespoon a day. Peanut oil, which I have some here, is another oil that, you know, I use it occasionally because sometimes olive oil, avocado oil, the flavor just doesn't work for what I'm cooking. Like Asian style foods or stir fries, peanut oil is really good. It has a higher smoke point, so you can stir fry with it, which is great. Peanuts are high in resveratrol, which is a type of antioxidant. And I can't say you're gonna get a ton of that from peanut oil by using it, but that is one of the beneficial nutrients in it. Peanut oil has more saturated fat than monounsaturated fat. So it's not an oil that I would want to use every day because I just don't want to get that much saturated fat into my diet. Same thing with sesame oil. You know, the flavor profile is really special. Sometimes I want this for my Asian style foods or my stir fries or my salad dressings, but I only use a small amount. And with both peanut and sesame, you want to make sure you get an unrefined oil. The more refined it is, that means the more processed it is, the more heat that's been applied to it, the less polyphenols it will retain, and also it racks up omega-3, omega-6 fatty acids, and those are the ones we don't want. Those are inflammatory. Canola oil is also on my occasional list. I honestly don't even have a bottle of it because I don't use it anymore. But if you buy canola oil, please get a GMO-free variety. Most of the canola is not organically raised, therefore it's raised with GMO. And we want to avoid pesticide residues in our oils. If you get an organic or GMO-free blend, you're probably going to get a better product. Make sure it's unrefined, same thing. The last one in my occasional oils is coconut oil. And coconut oil is really popular right now. It's marketed as really like a brain health food. It doesn't have a lot of data for that. Coconut oil is 90% saturated fat. And you can tell that because like butter, it's solid at room temperature, right? And this is a really good brand. This is Dr. Bronner's. It is organic, virgin. You might see extra virgin. You want to see unrefined. This is a good product of coconut oil if you want to use coconut oil. Again, the flavor is, something that you really need for baked goods and, certain types of foods. But I don't use much coconut oil in my cooking, honestly, because of the saturated fat content. And there's always been a lot of debate about whether or not coconut oil is good for the brain, because researchers are using medium chain triglycerides, or MCTs, which is one of the types of fats in coconut oil. They're using that to see if it's a treatment for Alzheimer's. And it's super interesting because some studies have shown that there are improvements in cognitive function in people if you give them MCTs. But these are people that already have mild cognitive impairment, or they already have some form of Alzheimer's disease. So the difference with that is if you take a healthy brain and you give them MCTs, it might help if they're fasting because it turns into ketones in the liver. But if you give it to someone who has maybe cognitive impairment, it may help because they no longer metabolize glucose. They only metabolize ketones for their preferential fuel. So it gets really, really confusing. For the average person who does not have cognitive impairment, I would say this has too much saturated fat to include it in your diet on a daily basis. And we now have a meta-analysis that was published in January in the Journal of Circulation that shows that coconut oil can increase your LDL cholesterol by 9%, which is actually quite a lot. We know that as your LDL cholesterol goes up, so does your heart disease risk, and so does your risk of Alzheimer's. There's a direct link between LDL cholesterol and Alzheimer's risk. So for that reason, I can't recommend using it a lot at all, especially if you are working on getting your cholesterol down, or if you have problems in that area, or risk factors for Alzheimer's or heart disease. But I use it as an occasional oil because it has a great flavor profile that I use sometimes. And then lastly, we have the oils that I just really don't recommend. And the ones on this list are corn oil, grapeseed oil, anything with the word hydrogenated in it, palm oil, because most of the palm oil that you will get at the supermarket is going to be refined. If you look at the package labels of processed foods, there's a ton of palm oil in there. There is a really healthy form of palm oil, but we're not likely to get that at our supermarkets. Rice bran oil, anything that's refined coconut, avocado, or olive oil. A lot of olive oils are marketed to be healthy when they're actually refined products. You have to look at the label and really kind of discern whether or not that's true. Rice bran oil is used in a lot of processed foods, restaurant foods. Safflower oil, soybean oil, sunflower oil, anything that says vegetable oil on it is probably highly processed and mostly corn. And the reason these are on my avoid list is they're very high in omega-6 fatty acids. Omega-6s it's a nutrient that we need just like omega-3s, but the average American diet has a ratio of 16:1 omega-6s to 3s. And the actual ratio should be more like 1:1. So we really want to constantly work on boosting our intake of omega-3 fatty acids, try to avoid the foods that have omega-6s. And it's easier in your kitchen because you can choose which oils to have and get rid of all the other ones that you know are not good to use. It's harder when you eat out. So this is what I usually do. I have been known to take my own olive oil to restaurants. If I'm ordering a nice salad at a restaurant, I don't have a problem asking them what kind of oil they're using in the dressing. I've worked in a lot of restaurants in my culinary training and before, and I know that a lot of those oils are extra virgin olive oil or a pure olive oil, which is actually a refined product, which is on my do not eat list, cut with something else like canola oil. So they're not always the best oils, and some restaurants have excellent oils in their salad dressing, don't get me wrong, but I don't mind asking no matter where I am. And if I'm not pleased with the answer, I just bring this out and drizzle on my dressing. And it's really hard to avoid consuming the unhealthy oils in the foods that you eat outside of the home. So you just have to be really aware of it, and it's never going to be 100% perfect to avoid it, but we try. Another way to avoid those oils is by looking at processed foods and packages. Crackers, anything that comes in a package like cookies, crackers, anything that has had high heat applied to it. I'm willing to bet there'll be rice bran oil, soybean oil, palm oil, or one of those oils in it. How are we doing on time, Alex?
We're doing okay. We're at 1:25.
Oh, great.
Our That's Eastern time. And we do have a handful of questions. Do you want to pause now for those? Okay, great.
Absolutely. And I'm answering questions, I'm going to show you what I'm making too. I'm just going to get it going.
Excellent. Okay, so first question is, if you keep olive oil in a cabinet, is it okay to buy it in a bottle, or is a tin preferred?
You know, it should be a dark colored bottle like this, or a tin. But if it comes in a glass bottle or a plastic clear jar, I wouldn't buy it. It may have already been oxidized by the time it got to the store. Yeah. And then I do keep it, I keep this on my countertop, and I keep it away from the stove. I try to keep it over here somewhere. And this is my olive from a tin that I pour in, but I could just as well be, you know, a small jar that I keep handy. But everything else goes in a cupboard that's fairly cool. My nut oils go in the fridge.
Good point. For avocado oil, is expeller pressed equivalent to cold pressed? Is it the same as unrefined? Is there a difference?
You know, these marketing terms are so confusing. It basically is the same. Cold expressed and expeller expressed is basically the same. What the company is trying to tell you is that they're not using high heat to make the oil. When you think about it, you know, if you have to extract oil from a seed, like sunflower oil comes from a seed, grapeseed oil comes from a seed, all those things, they have to apply a lot of heat to it and certain processing methods to get that oil out. If your oil comes from a fruit, like avocado is technically a fruit, so are olives, then you can use mechanical measures without high heat, and that's what the expeller and the cold is. If it says first cold expressed, that's a marketing term that doesn't mean anything.
Clever, clever. Okay.
Sounds good though, right?
Right. Which oils should you buy organic, and which aren't as necessary to purchase organic?
Oh, that's such a good question. I would say that all of my oils on the occasional list, that would be the canola, the peanut, the sesame, I would try to buy those organic. I mean, I'm not using very much of those in my kitchen. So if I have a small bottle that's organic, it's not going to be like a huge, you know, cost to my grocery bill, honestly. When it comes to olive oil, it gets really tricky. I don't always buy organic. It's sort of a case-by-case thing. You know, in Italy, if you're getting imported olive oil, they have a DOC, which is kind of like organic. They also have organic designation, but they have a certification that says that this came from where it says it came from. And that's a really good thing to look for, is DOC or DOCG. If you're getting a California oil, I think a lot of those, because the California board is so stringent about their olive oils, if it says it's from California, then either it's organic or not, it's probably a good oil.
Great. So back to a little bit of the storing of oils. Do you put any of them in the fridge after they are opened?
You know, I don't. And I'll tell you, when I used to buy oil, I used to buy a lot, like big bottles of oil, because it's cheaper. And I always wanted to, you know, like save money. But now I only buy what I think I can use in the next couple months. So I don't have a ton of olive oil lying around. So I just keep it in a cool cupboard. But if you live in a warm climate, your kitchen's very warm, you could certainly put it in the fridge. It might get a little bit cloudy, but that shouldn't affect the flavor.
Great. All right, another question here about ingredients. If an ingredient list of items on a box just says olive oil, should we think that's okay? For example, like crackers. So if it's just a generic ingredient listing, I think
it's probably refined olive oil, which is also called pure olive oil, which sounds really good, right? But this is olive oil from inferior olives that are pooled. Usually they're from different countries all over the place, like many different countries go into making that oil. It's a pooled product of their inferior olives, basically. But the most important thing is that they are refining it so that it can withstand higher heat. So a refined olive oil is in my, you know, my do not use category, because it's going to have a lot of omega-6 fatty acids. It's not going to have the polyphenols anymore. It's not going to have the hydroxytyrosol anymore. It's not really a health food anymore. It's been refined to the point where they can use it to make a cracker. But you know, if it was extra virgin, believe me, they would say so. there are really hot, nice crackers you can buy that say extra virgin olive oil. Because if they're going to use extra virgin olive oil, then they're going to brag about it, right? It's going to be a positive thing to get you to buy it.
And charge you for it.
Refined olive oils are just like everything else.
Okay, great. If we now know that so many types of oils are bad for you, why are they used in so many restaurants and packaged goods? Are they cheaper and more mass produced?
They are exactly cheaper and more mass produced. Yeah, and it's, and they're shelf stable too. If you work in a restaurant kitchen, you'll find huge jugs of oil, huge, like, 5-gallon jugs, and they go through that stuff pretty quickly. But the other problem with some restaurant food is that they reuse the oil. So like one of my favorite fried foods to get in a restaurant is falafel. And I don't get it very often, but I don't have a great recipe of my own. So if you have one, please send it to me. But they're deep fried, and they reuse that oil over and over. And once the oil gets used, like boiled and then down and boiled and back up, it doesn't have any nutrients left in it, and it racks up those omega-6 fatty acids, which we know are bad for us, and advanced glycation end products. So I think that restaurants are probably having a tough enough time, right now as it is, to like worry about having the most pristine oils on board all the time. But I think it comes from us to ask and tell what we want. And some restaurants are very, very reputable in terms of the oils that they will sell.
And then we'll have some time at the end for additional questions. And before we move on to your recipe, is there any indication that eating olives directly has a benefit versus the olive oil?
Absolutely. Olives I have a recipe I'm posting this weekend for a fig and olive tapenade. And I'm talking about how olives are actually a really great thing to snack on. Of course, olives run the gamut when you go to the grocery store. If you can buy them with their pits still intact, instead of already pitted, they're going to soak up a lot less of that brine that they're in. They're going to be less salty and have less of a sodium load on your system, if that's something that you're following. They also are a lot more flavorful and juicy. But I cook with olives all the time, and I would consider them to be really good for you. They're also very filling and have a lot of fiber.
Great. All right, so continue to ask your questions in the Q&A, and we'll be sure to make time for those after the demo.
You bet. And so one thing I'm making, I don't have an actual written down recipe for this, but I can write it down for you if you like. And this is a berry salad dressing. I'm just trying to get more and more berries while they're in season into my food. So what I'm sauteing in a pan here is just a tablespoon of olive oil, and that's my everyday olive oil, a half a cup of blueberries, and a small shallot that I sliced. And I just sauteed it for a couple minutes to get the blueberries nice and soft. And then I'm setting that aside to cool. And once it's cool, I'm gonna put it in a blender with balsamic vinegar, about a quarter cup, olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, half a cup, some salt and some pepper. And you can add some herbs to that, like thyme is really good with blueberries, tarragon is really good with blueberries. I'm gonna put that in a blender and make a creamy dressing out of it. And when it's done, it looks like that. And this will keep in your fridge for at least a week, so you can dress your salads with it throughout the week. It's also good on fish or chicken. And it's just sort of a creamy berry dressing. So that's one of the new things I'm working on. Another thing is, I told you, the avocado butter. And the reason I'm making the avocado butter is we're gonna have fish for dinner. And I wanted to tell you about my just easiest method of preparing salmon. You can take salmon fillets. Sometimes I have a whole side of salmon, sometimes I just have a couple pieces. And I put it in a pan with a little bit of olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, an everyday type of olive oil. And then I just put salt and pepper on top. And then I put it in an oven at 225 for 25 minutes. Now that's the part that's easy to remember. 225 for 25 minutes. Because everyone's always asking, how do you cook the fish? What temperature, how long? Because it's such a low temperature, it's very forgiving. You can check on it, like towards the end, and it will be medium rare right at 25 minutes. It'll be rare right around 20 minutes. And if you like your fish fully cooked through with no pinkness at all, you can go to 30. But once it's the way you like it, you can just turn the oven off, or you can set this aside. And it's really, really delicious with the avocado butter. It's really good if you want to make it part of a salad, which is what I'm probably gonna end up having for lunch or serving my husband later. Drizzled with that berry dressing. That's something that I really, really like. Now, do we have time to make the avocado butter, Alex?
Yes, we do.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so all we're doing is, it's optimal if you have a ripe avocado. This avocado is not the ripest one I've had, but we'll see how we do. Basically, it's equal parts avocado to butter. So this 1 large avocado, and this is roughly 4 ounces of butter. And then I'm going to add, I don't know if you can tell, this is my food processor, 2 tablespoons of freshly squeezed lemon juice, a nice pinch of salt, and garlic. And this, one of the things that I like having on hand are these already peeled organic garlic, because I go through a lot of garlic in the kitchen, and it just really, I don't know, it just saves me a lot of time. And they're good. They're actually quite good. So I'm going to put some garlic in there too. This is actually a recipe of my mom's. I've never published it. I eat it all the time, so I thought it'd be fun to share with you. And I'm going to add a little bit more lemon juice. Add enough lemon juice until it gets the consistency of kind of like a whipped butter. And then 1 more. Like I said, that avocado is a little bit less than ripe. This is a good thing to do with your avocados that look like they might be going bad, because they're still good, they just don't look good. All right. So it's not as creamy as it normally looks, and that's because of the avocado, but it's really delicious. And I'm going to put this right on our fish. And then right before we eat, we're going to go ahead and drizzle that with the berry dressing. And that makes for a really, really easy lunch. And I have another piece of fish I can have for later. Do we have any more questions?
We do, and that looks amazing. Okay.
You can use avocado butter too. So you can make a big batch. Let's say a bunch of avocados you want to get rid of. You can go ahead and make the butter, freeze it, and then bring it out in small portions whenever you want it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That'll go over very well in my household. Any recommendations for store-bought crackers? Somebody's asking.
Store-bought crackers. You know, there's a, oh gosh, I don't know if I'll be able to tell you the brand. And I live in the West, so it might be different from where you are anyways. But there are some crackers that the only ingredients might be like organic flour, extra virgin olive oil, and salt. And those are probably going to be just fine. I buy crackers like that too sometimes. There's also a brand of, oh, I have a cracker I like. Hold on. I like these Raincoast crisps. They're kind of expensive, so I don't buy them a lot, and they're also kind of addicting, so it's not good for me to have these around. But these also are like a whole grain cracker, and these have nothing junky in them. They're actually really good.
Great. And somebody's asking if you have any recommendations as far as safe cookware.
Safe cookware, that's a really tough one because most of it is really not very good. So it's a small list. I like non-stick ceramic. So this is a brand called Green Pan, non-stick ceramic. And it's not coated with Teflon or anything like that they can scrape off that you might worry about getting exposed to. The problem with these pans is that if you use them at high heat, then they're not nonstick anymore. They're really only for low heat cooking. So that becomes a problem in my family because I'm not the only person cooking. So if someone comes and uses the pan and it's hot, it's kind of ruined. So I find that these have a short shelf life in my house. I really like for baking ceramic like this. This is actually a stab pan, but there's lots of other ones. I use cast iron a lot, such as these cast iron coated pans. And I also use, I have a huge collection of, cast iron pans like this. They have to be seasoned, meaning they have to be cooked. And then when you're done, you can see there's some oil on there. I spread it usually with avocado oil to protect the finish. And you just have to be careful with cast iron if you're worried about iron levels in your blood. There's a medical condition called hemochromatosis that you would know you had if you had a blood work recently. Your doctor would probably flag it. But other than that, I don't think that's a huge concern.
Great. Question about avocado ripeness. If it turns brown, that part gets cut out and tossed, correct? This is someone asking, or is the whole avocado bad? I think we all have that question.
It might be slightly bitter. So I'm a frugal chef. So if it's brown and I'm making a smoothie, I might go ahead and add that because I don't think it's going to affect the taste of the smoothie. Okay. If I'm making a really nice salad and I'm slicing some avocado, I'm certainly going to cut out all the brown parts because nobody wants to eat that. If I'm making avocado butter, they have to be like that perfect amount of ripeness. And I would probably scrape off any visible dark brown spots, but if they're light brown, I wouldn't worry about it. And there's one thing about avocados, I don't know if you know this trick, but I just got these at the grocery store today. And I usually buy them like pretty green. And then as they get ripe on my kitchen counter, I grab them and I use them. But if you're at the grocery store and you can't tell, you can take a peek under the stem. So if you take off that stem, I don't know if you can see that, but it's green, but it's not bright green. That means it's not quite ripe yet. It'll probably be ripe tomorrow. If you take off that stem and it's brown, then the whole thing is going to be brown. So I don't know what avocados cost where you live, but I think these were like $2 each. So you get your avocado home, you open it up, and it's the whole thing is brown. So it's just really disappointing. So if I'm not sure, sometimes I'll actually check under the stem.
That's a great tip. And are there types of avocados that you would recommend over others? Hass versus, I don't know what, or are they all the same?
The Hass are the larger ones. And I think the smaller ones have better flavor. But I just get whatever avocado really looks best. And they can be so expensive. I don't always buy them organic because, you're taking off that peel and you're washing it really well. It's not one of the fruits that the pesticides are thought to penetrate very deeply. So I'll get non-organic avocados all the time. Unless the organic ones look better, then I'll choose those.
Great. And just one point of clarification around the blueberry dressing. When you blend it, is it just the 1 tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil, half a cup of blueberries, and the sliced shallot? Those 3 things?
No, it's actually half a cup of olive oil, a 1/4 cup of balsamic vinegar, and then the blueberries and shallots were cooked in another, like about a tablespoon of olive oil.
Got it.
Pinch of salt, pinch of pepper, and then herbs if you want to.
Great. So we have about 15 minutes left for additional questions, if anyone has more to ask. And I think, were you going to sort of give a few thoughts on sort of the emerging world of plant-based foods and diet?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I had a question or a discussion on Instagram about whole food plant-based, which is, well, it's defined different ways, but there is a point of view that you shouldn't use any cooking oils at all. The all oils are basically bad for your health, bad for your brain. And you know, it's interesting because I think that the Mediterranean diet studies use an abundant amount of olive oil. The Mind diet makes olive oil its own brain healthy food group. And in that study, the participants had 53% less Alzheimer's at the end of the study. And there's this theory that if you add, especially olive oil in your cooking, there's a synergy that the oils have with the food. So if it's mostly a plant-based diet, or I like to say plant-rich, mostly a plant-rich diet, it's full of phytonutrients. It's full of all of these polyphenols and flavonoid types of things in your foods that are good for your brain. These are the things that you want to be flooding your brain with. But they don't get absorbed as well without the presence of oil. So the thoughts on the Mediterranean diet is that there's a synergy between the olive oil and the fruits and vegetables, and a little bit of red wine too is thought to be part of it, so that there's greater absorption. It's thought to be synergistic. If you take out all that oil, I think you can get all the nutrients fine. People who follow whole food plant-based diets are eating an enormous amount of plant-rich foods. That's all they eat. It's vegan or nearly so for most people. So I think that can be brain healthy too. Just like you don't have to drink red wine to be brain healthy, although red wine has some brain health benefits, you don't have to use cooking oil to be brain healthy too. The data, however, is on the side of the olive oil rich dietary patterns around the world. And there is emerging data from the whole food plant-based world, but specifically Alzheimer's, I haven't seen it.
Great, that's so helpful. Okay, a few last questions. One of our viewers is asking if you would ever substitute chicken, or yeah, for the fish.
Oh, sure. But in terms of that cooking method, probably not. I probably wouldn't cook it at 225 for 25 minutes. That's particular for salmon that's about 1 inch thick, or some other type of fatty fish like cod. No, I don't think the cooking method is interchangeable. You want your chicken to be done until the juices run clear when it's poked with a knife.
Great. And I think this is a question that's top of mind for a lot of people in terms of grocery shopping and still managing the risk of COVID. How are you cleaning berries purchased in the store, or I guess other, plant, fruits and vegetables?
That's a really good question. I'm more worried about pesticides and COVID on my berries, honestly, if that's what you mean. From the data I read, New England Journal of Medicine put out a really good paper about COVID-19 on surfaces and whatnot. I think we're getting COVID mostly from the air we share, not from the things that we touch. That being said, I do come home and wash all my produce really well, but I've always done that. So when I bring berries home, it depends on the type of berry, okay? So if they're very delicate berry, like a raspberry or a blackberry, then I'm not gonna wash them until right before I wanna eat them, because they get soggy and mushy and they go bad faster. If it's a blueberry or cranberry or other type of berry like that, then sure, I'll wash them as soon as I get home. I have this great basket I use. Hold on. I don't know if I can find it. This is a smaller version, but sometimes you can find these aerated baskets, sort of like a salad spinner for berries. And I have a larger one than this somewhere. But I'll put the berries in that, I'll wash them, I'll make sure it's nice and dry in the bottom, cover it and put it in the fridge. If you have berries that are really perishable, like raspberries and blackberries, I'll dump them out of their container and put them on a plate, on a paper towel or something, because they go bad by touching each other. Like if you have one berry that's going moldy, as we all know, everything it touches is gonna go moldy too. So those berries will actually last a lot longer if you put them on a plate, single file, put them back in the fridge, and then wash them right before you use them. And I don't always buy my berries organic, although that would be the ideal. Sometimes they're prohibitively expensive. Sometimes they're not the best berries at the market. So if my berries are not organic, then I'm just really careful to wash them well.
That's great. We're so pleased to have spent the afternoon or late morning with you once again, and such a wealth of information for all of us to take in. So just a reminder, everybody, this will be on HFC's YouTube channel in case you want to rewatch it, or please feel free to share it with folks. And the webinar that Dr. Fenn did, I guess it was back in maybe April, is also on there. It feels like, yeah, really feels like last year at this point. And so please, we encourage you to visit HFC at www.wearehfc.org, and please check out Dr. Fenn's Brain Health Kitchen at www.brainhealthkitchen.com. And yeah, we'll follow up with that cheat sheet for you of the cooking oils. Any final thoughts?
Oh, thanks so much, Alex. Thanks to HFC for having me. One final thought: be sure to get the cheat sheet. It'll really help you with your grocery shopping. And there's a lot of buying tips on there that I couldn't go over. And the other issue is, if you have any questions about some of the data I cited, like the meta-analysis about coconut oil and LDL, just let us know. We'll get you that information as well.
Yes, definitely feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to follow up. And happy cooking, everyone. Enjoy your weekend.
Have a great weekend. Thanks for coming.
Thanks so much, everyone. Bye.